everyone. A couple of months back, I was working on a multifamily project with came to learn about John Shannon and Talyssa They work with they are higher building. It's a pretty unique outfit that they have. They moved here actually it was about 2 years ago from San Diego, right? 3 years ago. Yeah. 3 years ago. And interestingly enough, what brought them here was actually the passing of 2040. They wanted to come to Minneapolis, kind of immerse themselves into the new rules, the new opportunities to do accessory dwelling units and things of that nature. So I can't imagine there's anybody that knows more about it than these two, and I thought it'd be great to bring them in and get into, to kind of lay the groundwork and talk about some of the things that they do in that space. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to them.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Yeah, so I'm John Shannon. This is Talyssa, and we started HWire Building actually in San Diego around 2015. We had just graduated with our master's in architecture, and we wanted to enter into the space of design and architecture from kind of a more unique perspective. So in San Diego at the time, it was really big, kind of the whole ADU process, which is accessory dwelling units. So while we were in San Diego, we focused on that and also other single family residential projects. And then we were looking to kind of grow our business. I have family that's from Minneapolis, and we wanted kind of something new, a place that we could actually do our own projects while continuing to help clients. And as we were researching around the United States, we stumbled upon Minneapolis as being actually very progressive in terms of zoning and construction and design. So we took the leap and we moved out here in 2019 and have been doing our own projects as well as helping clients. We do single family residential design, but we also do multifamily, a lot of conversions for clients from single family to duplex, triplex. ADUs here aren't as popular as they were in San Diego, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But kind of like Tim was saying, the 2040 plan, which they started kind of pushing through the city in around 2018. And then in 2020, January 1st is when it was brought into the ordinances of zoning code and such. And from that point forward, we've really been focusing on multifamily conversions. And we also, like I said, have a few single family residential projects.
Yeah, so the focus now of the 2040 plan specifically for residential zoning is that any single family zoned property, you can build up to 3 units. So that could be single family, duplex, triplex, or duplex plus ADU. The duplex plus ADU nowadays is more if you want an internal ADU or external ADU. So if you want it detached, you can do an ADU above the garage. So those are the projects we tend to focus on, and then we also do ourselves. We like to work sometimes with structures that are already there. For example, like a 1904 home, we try and integrate all the historic elements of that conversion for ourselves or for clients.
Yeah, and the kind of the format for the presentation today is very much going to be question answer. It's a lot of information. We're here to try and facilitate you being able to access that information so that when you're meeting with your clients, you can be informed about what certain properties or sites, the potential, essentially. The 2040 plan was all about development for Minneapolis. So this is talking about Minneapolis. It's not talking about counties or other cities outside of Minneapolis. If you have specific questions about those, we can kind of touch base on that, probably more in email back and forth format. But it was economic growth for the city, development for the city, transportation. So it's a huge comprehensive plan. Pretty much all we're talking about today is construction, design, development. The main point that this was talking about is now the whole city is essentially 3 units equal on any property. Okay, that doesn't mean that it's possible. There's a lot that goes into that: cost, setbacks, a whole variety of zoning issues. So, I think if anyone has a question that they might have heard from somewhere, or any firsthand experiences or anything.
I was just gonna ask you specific to that. In theory, every lot could be a 3-unit. What are some of the like common guardrails or things that you're running into? Are there some general rules of thumb where we could take into the field with us and kind of know that we should put up a caution button on a lot like this, it might not work, and then maybe similar question but slightly different. Are you finding that there are misconceptions out there, like common misconceptions that you've heard? Could you maybe just, so we can proactively learn that stuff? Is there anything you can touch on there, like
Yeah.
a couple of top ones that they come to mind?
Yeah, so to kind of answer the first part, the zoning code is pretty complex. There's 2 maps that essentially you would be looking at. We have an email link that'll go out to everyone a little later on, and we can also share the screen at any point, it doesn't matter. But there's the base zoning code, which the city has had for a long time, they're constantly updating. And then there's the built form overlay, which is the 2040 plan specific ordinances. So when you're kind of perusing through the zoning code, let's say you have a property, you'll see it has certain restrictions. There's even more restrictions or even more code that applies to that property in the built form overlay. So one of the misconceptions, or one of the things that you run into, is you have to be looking at both maps kind of simultaneously. They haven't integrated it into one map yet. So if you're on a property, you're looking at certain things, you just have to keep in mind that while you might have looked at the zoning code map, but you didn't look at the built form overlay map. So to always keep that kind of in the back of your head. It's kind of hard to say, oh, well, there might be a red flag for this property or the other. It all comes down to your client, how much they're willing to spend or what they're willing to do. Even if you only have a 50-foot standard citywide lot that goes back 100 feet or so, or 150 feet, you could still develop a triplex on that. The largest thing that we run into is you have an existing single-family home, beautiful home. It was built like kind of the example Talyssa said, 1904. You think, well, I can triplex in here. There's this great first floor, second floor space. There's this attic and there's this basement. Fire sprinklers is the biggest hindrance to that project. With the fire that happened in Cedar Riverside a couple years ago, also with kind of the progression of just fires in general in the U.S. and the state, there's more fire protection now. So what that means is the main difference from, as you're looking at a project, you might say, okay, it's feasible as a duplex. That still falls under residential building code. If you're looking at it from a triplex or greater standpoint, that now falls under commercial building code. One of those main differences is fire sprinklers. So now you have to implement fire sprinklers into that project.
Yeah, when we went to the city of Minneapolis, back when you could go and talk to the reviewers, we asked like, okay, how many people are actually processing these permits for triplexes within existing properties? Everybody was coming to us at the time. People were converted to a triplex, and they were like, well, 90% of them are just dead as soon as we tell them you need fire sprinklers. And the issue isn't necessarily just like each fire sprinkler head and the cost of that. It's like probably because you need to upgrade your water line. And the main service comes from the city. And so now you're involving like replacing the water line from the city all the way to the property, and now also installing all the fire sprinklers. So in general, people were thinking, oh, I'm going to spend like 30 to 40,000 to put a kitchen and bathroom up in the attic. Just add another 30,000 of just, those costs that are integrated as well. And so a lot of people end up not doing it. So another option is a lot of garages here are kind of collapsing, or they're old, or, you're kind of going to demo them anyways. So we're doing a lot of projects where you build the ADU above the garage. So you can have a duplex, 2 units, and then you have the ADU above the garage. And that's becoming like more common because you don't have to have fire sprinklers because it's detached from the other 2 units. So it doesn't trigger that requirement.
Yeah, and there's a couple other kind of gray areas or exemptions from that fire sprinkler ordinance where if you have they count stories, it's not like, oh, that's a 2-story home. The city counts a story as the basement, the first floor, second floor, and the attic. So that's actually a 4-story home. But
You said it again, sorry.
yeah, so as a layperson, you see a house and you say that's a 2-story, 4-square house, right? Traditional Minneapolis house. The city, however, per the code, sees it as 4 stories. You have a basement, typically, you have a first floor, a second floor, and you have an attic. So,
And this is because of egress. This
Yeah.
is like people actually living in there, accessing different spaces. And if there were to be a fire, how do they exit and egress?
So you're talking about a 2.5-story technically. An attic you can walk up to, not
Right.
just an attic that every house has an attic. You're talking about a walk-up attic.
right, if you were to convert that space, let's say, to a usable space, to another unit, right? So the exemption to the fire sprinkler is if the building is 2 stories. So oftentimes the only time we come across that is ranch style, single level, and a basement. And it's typically a side-by-side duplex or a single family house. There you can start doing a triplex situation under 4,500 square feet without having to do fire sprinklers. So, all of this is in the code and we help, this is where we help clients kind of sift through the code because it's very tedious. There's options out there, but if you're on a property and your client says, hey, Tim, I want to make this a triplex. Well, one little red flag would be, okay, well, I'm looking at the house right now. It's going to be 3 stories. There's a unit in the attic, first floor, second floor. You're going to need fire sprinklers. So just think about the cost of that.
One question I had about that is it still code that you have to have 2 exits for
Yeah.
each unit?
Yeah, so again, that also plays into the exemptions for sprinklers. For example, in a basement, you have to have a direct, this is duplex or triplex, it doesn't matter. You have to have now a direct egress out of the basement. It can't be common area either. Let's say you come, typically you would come down the back stairs into like a utility space, there might be laundry for the building, and then you would enter the unit. That unit needs a direct access on its own, unhindered out. The second form of egress in that case would be in a window, through a window. If you're doing an attic unit, that's where it gets a little tedious because yes, now you need 2 forms of egress. You need a form through the house and out, or on the side, and another form of egress out the back.
The other misconception is I can add an egress window anywhere on any side of the property, but if you're too close to the setback, they don't allow an egress window there. So people kind of design things like, oh, the bedroom would go great on this side, but then realize you can't put an egress well on that side because you need a minimum of 3 feet beyond the well to walk around. So that's another misconception. And people sometimes add them. Then if you go show the city actually makes you remove the well and then, makes you move the well to the other side where you can have it.
Another great example is there was a perfect property for a triplex conversion. It already has 2 units. It had an illegal unit in the basement. They wanted to convert that unit to a legal 3rd unit, thus making it a triplex. However, the property was so close to the property line, it was only about 2 feet, and the next house was only about 3 feet from that property line, that all the windows on that side now, because you've entered into commercial building code, right, you're in the triplex zone, had to be either fire rated glass, or you can only have a certain amount of glazing on that side, which once you remove the glazing and this and that, now you can't have any legal bedrooms. So it was kind of a can of worms down that line. So there's a lot to kind of think about once you enter that triplex zone.
Yeah, if you're like representing clients who are looking into doing the project, the time of doing kind of that research would be prior to purchasing and closing. So if you have 36 days to close, you probably want to spend the money up front to like actually see what you're getting into and how much that's going to cost down the line. Because a lot of people like will talk to us and say, oh, I can get this done for 20,000. And I have never seen anything done for 20,000. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't know where you are, but I don't think that's possible.
Talyssa's also a licensed realtor in Minnesota and California. So we face this quite often for clients and such, but yeah. Go ahead, one more point.
Would you say a majority of your business then is doing this conversion on existing properties, or do you do new builds?
Mainly existing properties. We only do new build for single family right now.
Okay.
Because in Minneapolis, the land value, when you compare it, like there's a property across the alley from us right now. It's an old duplex. It's got a nice big lot. It would be ideal to tear that house down and build a nice 3-unit apartment, and then you could condo it in the future or something like that. But the cost of purchasing that, tearing it down, building new, it's just not feasible. So, while the 2040 plan was still progressing, there was a lot of opponents to the plan. And their main thing was, you're going to tear down our city and build these new ugly condos that everyone's building. But that's not happening because it's just not feasible. It doesn't make sense, even to developers that are developing all the time. It just doesn't make sense. So a lot of it is existing homes, converting those, where yes, it does make sense. And the beauty of that is you keep the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah, the other sticker shock is some people are like, oh my God, that ADU in the back of that garage. I mean, it's so beautiful. And then it's probably around $200,000 to $300,000 to build that. And you can buy a full-blown single-family home for that price. So that's why they were more popular in San Diego, because a shack is $1 million. So if you add a $300,000 shack behind it, it's worth it. But here, it's the cost still doesn't make sense for a lot of properties and a lot of areas.
That's just it, right? It's not feasible yet.
Yet,
Right.
yeah, it's true, yet.
Well, I think it was even, and now it has become not.
Right.
Taking into consideration the rising, property value and the cost of materials and labor, it's nuts. I mean, I think that you could have done a garage and built a shell, right? Had it plumbed, wired for 50 grand.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you can't even touch that.
Yeah, that's the hard part now, for sure.
So that is a question that comes around a lot, is like, well, how much would it cost to do that over the garage, right? And I mean, you guys have looked at this a lot of times, and in the current market, what are you seeing is sort of your base cost?
Here's the problem. It would be amazing if you could just slice the garage right at the roof line and build above there. But because we're in Minneapolis, and this is where it's also more feasible in San Diego, you don't have frost. Here you have frost. The city would never allow it unless that garage already had frost footings. I mean, 99% of garages don't have frost footings.
In Minneapolis.
Minneapolis.
What is it kind of like pre-19?
No, still now, I mean, you don't, even now, you don't have to build a garage with frost footings, which, the city should change that if they want to kind of go in that direction, but you can legally build a garage without frost footings. So the problem is you have to demolish the garage and do frost footings because everything's attached.
So basically, you have to pull up the slab too, and then put in the footings.
I mean, there's
Do
ways.
slab?
Yeah, there's ways around it where you can do ICF block, you can underpin, you can jack it up, but it costs a lot. So like Talyssa was saying, I mean, you're in the $250,000 range. The way that we kind of put it is $250 to $300 a square foot for new construction. If you are an owner builder that has experience and you have subs that you've used before and you can handle managing a project, you can get those costs down. But for a typical homeowner to hire a GC, come back and do it, that's pretty much what you're looking at. And a standard garage nowadays is like 30, 40 grand just for a regular old garage. So
Do you tap into the house and sewer line, or do you go direct to this, you tap into the house?
it could go both ways.
Okay.
And it depends on where the existing stack is in the house. Let's say it's at the front of the house by the street. The garage is 70 feet to the back. Might not make sense to try and get through the basement because there might be living space or other things happening there. In which case you would go around the house through the yard. Same with water. Most ideal situation is you just drill through the foundation wall, connect to the stack, connect the water. Electricity and gas is much more simple. There's no frost requirement. So
Yeah, and in terms of like metering, you can meter separately gas and electric, but you have one water line, so the water will always be on one bill. That's something we always recommend is separate metering. If you're going through all this trouble, might as well do a separate meter, even if it's an ADU that you're like, oh, it's an artist studio in the back. It's better to just have it all on its own meter.
there's a lot of different requirements. The ADU in Minneapolis almost became obsolete with the passing of the 2040 plan. Because why do an ADU if you can do a duplex?
Triplex.
The only reason you would do an ADU in this case is you want it detached from the house. So over the garage or its own structure out in the yard.
Which you can't do as a triplex.
Or a duplex. Yeah, so in the city, unless your lot meets the requirements of what's called a cluster development, you can't have a duplex that's detached. You can't have one unit over here, one unit over here, unless it's a cluster development. All the units have to be attached. The ADU, because it doesn't fall under that requirement, can be detached over a garage or its own structure. That's the only reason pretty much why you would do an ADU now.
Yeah, and the city of Minneapolis still has the requirement that if the ADU is internal, they want the homeowner to live there and be registered as an owner on site. But if it's detached, you don't need to be an owner and you could be an investor.
That'll change it. Originally it was you had to be an owner no matter what the condition of the ADU was, detached or attached. So they shifted that to what Talyssa just said. So hopefully the next step is they'll shift it once more so that you don't have to be there at all. But again, we understand, I mean, the whole point is to try and protect neighborhoods from short-term rentals or full rentals down the block. You know, still want homeowners living in these properties.
Did you want to show them the two sites?
Yeah.
Over there.
Have you heard any rumblings about making any tweaks to that, to the way they passed it?
Not in terms of that. There is no more parking requirement though. So the city of Minneapolis, you don't have to provide parking for anything.
Okay.
Now, does it make sense on a rental income base? Like, does someone want to go pay $2,000 for a nice 1 and 2 bedroom apartment in uptown and not have parking? Maybe not.
Yeah.
So, but the advantage is, let's say before you had to provide 1 parking space per dwelling. Now you can provide 2, or let's say it's a triplex. Now you only have to provide 2. I'd shift it a little bit. Yeah, so this is the zoning map that the city of Minneapolis has. Again, we'll send this link out, but it's a really good resource for you to just save in your bookmarks tab. Essentially, I'll just stand here so the camera can still see.
You'll be
me, but-
good. Yeah, don't worry about it.
If Talyssa were to type an address like 2724 Aldrich, or yeah, just click on. So you can, there's two formats. You can search up in the search bar for your address. So it pulls up this property. You kind of have to, it's still a little glitchy, so you have to actually like, again, click on the parcel. But then it tells you what zone it is. So in this case, it's zoned R2B. Before the 2040 plan, that basically meant duplex. R2B is multifamily, you can do up to 2 units. And then there's different R2BA or R2A, B, whatever. However, now it's kind of irrelevant because you can go up to a triplex there. There's still a lot of conditions, side yard setbacks, rear yard setbacks, FAR that fall into that. However, now with the second map that you would go to once you see kind of the base zoning is the built form overlay map. Just click on the tab up top. So this is the Minneapolis 2040 built form overlay map. Part of it, we didn't touch on it before, is the city's trying to increase density and mainly along transit thoroughfares. So if your clients or you are seeking opportunities, the closer you can get to these major thoroughfares, the better. If you're on the back, if you're on, for example, Aldrich Avenue, closer to Lindale, you can go up to, I think it's like 6 stories. But if you're on the other side of Aldrich, you're limited to only 3 stories. So the closer you get to these major arteries, Lindale, Hennepin, Nicollet, et cetera, the more you can develop. That is what you or your clients are interested in.
That's fascinating.
But yeah, so you would search that base zoning code, then you would go to the built form overlay map. And from there, you would look at, it's an overlay on the zoning. So anything that dictates, it dictates the lower zoning code. It takes precedent. So FAR, setbacks, that now kind of runs all through the built form overlay. So it's just something to look at as you're going. Yeah, so this is a house that we own on Aldrich. When we moved to Minneapolis, it was a single family house. We bought it for what's like pennies compared to now, only 3 years ago. And we converted it to a duplex. So now it's essentially, it's a 2-family district, like I said, R2B, but that built form overlay is interior 3. Talyssa can go back here and click on, so you can click on interior 3. The city's really cool. They give you an example of what that would be. And you can kind of run with it from there. We come across a lot of agents that will say, for example, there's a lot that's for sale down the road from us. I won't be specific in case someone in here is the agent. But we had a client that wants to develop 6 units. They call the agent, say, hey, I want to build 6 units, or can I build 6 units on this property? So he's already putting it on the agent to know the zoning code. The agent says, yes, of course, no problem. I already know right off the bat, no, cannot. He called me and said, John, there's this great property you can build. No, you can't. It's only 3 units, okay? Because we went to here, I showed him this. We called the city just to kind of confirm it all. So it's really important to know these because people will call you if you're the listing agent, assuming that you're a designer or architect also, and city planner, and ask you these questions. And, obviously to get the sale or to try and promote it, we might just offhand throw something out. Yeah, no problem, whatever. To kind of know this so you understand, no, it's only 3 units, unfortunately, or yes, actually it's 6 units, but hey, guess what, even better, you can go up to 12 units. You can go 40 feet tall. So, just kind of things to understand.
But even then, you're like, per discretion of the city, even at that point, once you've done all the overlays, you've looked online, looked at everything, it's still up to the city and they can still come up with some other overlay that's not on any website that we have. And so that,
Yeah, and this could be a good tool for you to send to the other agent representing the other party or the interested buyer, so they can do their own research, so it doesn't come back on you as a liability standpoint.
Yeah, I know when I was working with my client with Blake earlier in the year, I encouraged them to have a plan A, B, C, market conditions and things that could change, so at least they kind of prepare them that like, what happens if you can't do this like big idea that you want to do? Is plan B or C feasible? Is it still okay? Would you still buy the property? And I think that's another way to think about it, maybe, but yeah, try to get them to speak directly with the city.
yeah, that's a great way. And I always say, here's the general overview. Call 311 to verify. And so you can call 311, your client can call 311. You just need a property address. Say you want to talk to the planning department or building department or zoning department, and they will pretty much get the general questions covered because you can talk directly to the zoning and planning department. It used to be easier where you could just walk into the city.
Oh, you can walk in.
Okay, we just don't walk in anymore.
We don't walk in.
But yeah, I would prefer actually doing that. Just walk in, get your questions answered right then and there. Nowadays they have, because of COVID, they make you wait a week to get a call back. I don't know what's the difference, but
It might not match up with your timeline. Yeah, so definitely trying to go into the city. It's a new building. It's beautiful. There's like no one there. So it's very quick actually to go in. So we would recommend doing that for sure. Any other questions or?
I have a question. What's the process, let's say the city is okay with everything, for the neighborhood to like approve the unit? Because I live in Northeast Minneapolis, and there's definitely been a few things that were planned that did not fly, so.
Yeah, so it's twofold. If you meet all the requirements of the zoning code, okay, let's say that property, you can build a triplex under these maps. You are under the height limitations, you're within the setbacks, you don't need any neighbor approval. It's all in the box of the code. As soon as you step outside that box, then the process goes through the planning commission. Essentially, your reviewer, your zoning reviewer, has to back you up. So let's say, for example, instead of 40 feet high, you wanted to go 50 feet high. You would fill out a whole series of forms to apply for a variance. The planning reviewer would have to be on your side. They would advocate for you. So they'll tell you right off the bat that's not going to fly. Like we're not going to.
right.
If they do, they then go to the planning commission. They're part of your team now. They go to the planning commission. The planning commission meets once a month. Planning commission will review it. If they support it, or they think it now has to go to the neighborhood meeting. Typically, the neighborhood meeting is anyone within 300 feet has an opportunity to go to that meeting and voice their concern or whatnot. A lot of projects get shot down when there's enough essentially neighborhood reaction against it. So at that point, the city will say, okay, it's not worth it. There are projects that still go through. It all depends. So.
But they had to apply for a variance in the first
Yes.
place to generate that feedback.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, and it's a longer process. Let's say we could get your typical permit for that triplex without not talking about design, just once we submit to the city in a couple months. That process will now take much longer because there's a lot of waiting periods between meetings, and there could be several meetings with the planning commission or with the neighbors. But you should receive a letter if you're within that 300 feet to attend that meeting.
How does the neighborhood feedback get adjudicated? Is it basically like just somebody on the planning review board decides like
It really depends,
It's not full, right? I mean, it's,
No,
you have to take the impressions that they gather. Right? Is that?
yep. The planning commission, I can't remember if you get, you're commissioned as a planning commission person. So you're either voted in by public, like when you go vote for council members, or you can apply. I can't remember which one it is, but you can apply and then the council members approve. But regardless, you could see where it could get kind of problematic if you gave the neighbors all the power at the same time. Can't give the planning commission all the power. So yeah, it's essentially a reaction to that neighbor.
They have to make a judgment call based on the reaction of the neighborhood meeting and decide.
Right.
Okay.
And then you can potentially appeal it.
Yeah, you can appeal.
It's not the reaction you want.
But there's a lot of very specific conditions that there's a links through the city on why they would approve, even give you the chance to go for a variance. Okay, you can't just decide, well, I want to rezone this property because I feel like it, and I want to go 50 feet because I feel like it. Well, that doesn't meet the conditions of applying for a variance to begin with. So there's a lot that kind of filters it out.
You do see a lot of projects where you should have your plan A, B, and C, where now they're being listed with plans that weren't possible to be built.
Yeah.
And they had the original plan, okay, we're gonna put 4 units on here, but they never allowed the 4 units. You can still only do 3 units. So we do see that frequently, even with developers. Like they go so far into it, then get a big no. So you always want to have the additional plans just in case you want to go for the variance. It's never a guarantee.
Right.
And we kind of always avoid it. If we're doing our own project, if we have to do a variance and that's the only way we can do this project, we won't do it. Because you're depending on neighbors and the city to say yes. And that just sounds bad to me. Even if you have the best intentions, there's always something that might come up.
Good
Pretty
cautionary.
bleak, honestly, None of this sounds very encouraging for people who want to move forward on this.
It's a valuable lesson to always remind ourselves in situations like this, like we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much to this, and you guys provide some services that are kind of maybe you want to talk about too that we might want to know about as well.
Yeah, so kind of like you would hire a property inspector to come through and look at everything. It's kind of tough in today's market, perhaps, where you're waiving those contingencies. But you could hire us on that same kind of platform where for a fee, you come in and we pretty quickly tell you this is what, these are the potentials of the property. So there's that. We can produce site plans at a very early stage for you to start understanding. Again, being able to present something to the city or to the client, their investors or whatever, that these are the possibilities. And then of course we provide full design and planning and permitting services for any type of project, really. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see more inspection contingencies. Market seems to be changing a bit in that regard. Hopefully that'll be one of the benefits, one of the good outcomes of that. And then it would just be a matter of building in that time necessary, right? I mean, you guys have a lot of projects going on, but I think it's a service that we should be aware of. And yeah, I think it's probably best to approach a project with some ideas in mind. What you could do and a little bit of understanding how this stuff works. We're going to that step, but yeah, it's great. I think it's wonderful. Have you guys seen any projects that really caught your attention that others have done, or kind of thinking out of the box, if you will, or creative things? Love to pick your brain on some of that, just so we can better understand like what some of the possibilities might be out there, whether it's combining lots or it's whatever.
I think my favorite is Sustainable Nine is a great firm in town, and they're out of Linden Hills. But they bought I'm not sure if they bought or a client of theirs bought, but a property on Abbott and the 39th or something like that. No, just the other one. We're talking about different projects. Yeah, Ewing. Yep. So this is a great plan A, plan B situation. They went into the project wanting to develop, I can't remember off the top of my head, but like 4 or 5 units. And Sustainable Nine, they've been doing these kind of row home projects. They applied for the variance, they went through the whole process, the city denied them. So they had a creative solution where they actually split the lot, because it was a very large lot, and ended up probably for cost and other factors, a duplex or 2 duplexes on each lot, right?
Yeah.
So it was a great example of, we were going for 4 or 5 units or however many it was in the beginning. This is all public record, by the way. If you just do a little Google search, you'll find the information, you'll find the variance application, the planning commission response, all that. And then their approach to split the lot and build 2 duplexes on each lot. So that was a great, kind of very creative solution to still squeezing out the most of that property.
And that's like 150 feet, right? It was-
Lot size?
Yeah,
That's huge.
maybe it was 130. I can't
Yeah, it
remember.
was
now.
2 lots minimum.
I thought they were going for 6, but they were.
I think-
they're still gonna kill it. With
Yeah, I think it was 6.
Are they the ones that did the one across the street from the park?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay,
same
yeah.
thing. Yep.
Yep, okay.
2 lots and then
Yep.
3 townhomes.
It's crazy how much those townhomes go for, but like 1.4, 1.5.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat wants to know what building is it where they can talk to the zoning department?
Oh, like if they actually showed up.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
the new building.
Downtown.
the address.
Yeah.
I can include that in the email that'll go out to.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's on 350 South 5th Street, Minneapolis. It's the new city building. A little weird to get to. It's kind of,
Any other projects that you think that have caught your eye that you thought were interesting or sort of unexpected in a good way?
and there's a lot of like beautiful single family properties that I can think about, but in terms of, there's a lot of new developments that I'll see kind of pop up on Facebook or something where they're shooting for variance, and I just think, I really hope they don't approve that.
Don't fit.
Well, it's just, the city, we love Minneapolis, but it can get a little more creative with the
Yeah.
forms. It's turning into a lot of boxes that are repetitive. And so, but there's a lot of great stuff out there right now. Yeah.
One, and I know you're not asking me, but there's one down on Hennepin down here that is, I think you guys have all seen it, but it's on, I want to say it's on 35th and Hennepin on the corner. And they do kind of like office space on the main floor, I think, and then residence above. And in the summertime, it's all open. And I think that they also have events there too. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's super cool. I always admire that. They're doing a new one down here, on 31st and Bryant. I don't know for sure what they're doing, but I know it's multifamily. Right across from the park, Bryant Square Park.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that one's kind of been hanging out for a little while.
Yeah. You know what they're doing there?
No, it's multifamily, but I don't know exactly.
Yeah, there's a smaller developer converting an existing church into multiple units. I think he decided to squeeze in 9 or 10 units, which, we'd love to get into that. We love like maintaining the existing structures and then converting internally.
Are you talking about the church right here on First?
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
not today. I walk past that every morning.
Yeah, I've been
yeah.
watching it. I've been
It's
like,
really cool.
I
what
love
you got
stuff
going on.
like
that.
Yeah.
Well, even like this was done, 20, 30 years ago, but when they converted that fire station down here in Hennepin,
oh yeah,
I love the idea of, but people just like come in and bulldoze everything and then.
it is.
Boxes.
The problem is it's cheaper to
Right,
bulldoze.
yeah,
So then that's the choice for a developer.
it's cheaper up front, but in the long run, is it? I don't know.
Is there a particular type of house that's worth targeting, where it might be more feasible to leave the structure? I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, actually, this Aldrich one's a good example, a typical 4-square. Come in the front door, you have a stair that goes up to the 2nd floor, and then you have the 1st floor living space right off that stair. So you can essentially close that in. Now it's common space. That stair goes up to the 2nd floor unit. So that 1st floor is now its own unit. That's a really nice kind of layout that you can find pretty frequently.
Another one that was done, and I'm sure y'all have been in it, is down in Franklin. It's gonna be east of Nicollet, and it was a school that was converted. That's super cool too. So those are like generally 2-bedroom, kind of vaulted ceiling, loftish style. But super cool.
And I'm a big fan of the modular units that came up near Lake Nokomis. It was like 32 units that went up in like
On
2 or 3
38th
months.
Street?
Yeah, I
About
think so.
24th?
And they just
Yeah.
literally brought in the
Yep.
units and craned them in.
Yeah,
And it
that's on
was like the
38th
first,
Street, yeah.
yeah, and he's a young developer, started here a couple of years ago as well. So they're getting really creative here in the city, which is very nice.
So I was talking to a home builder who purchased a tear down on a lot and a half from my client. And I said, are you gonna do something interesting here? Because it's a lot and a half and you could. And they're like, oh no, we're just gonna stick with the same plan because the city is not clear enough yet about what they're gonna permit. Like we don't trust them. And I just thought, yeah, so we're gonna get another, 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom house that looks like all the other ones. And it was such a depressing house,
I get it.
I mean, they were gonna tear down the house and start with a clean slate, and they're still like, nope, we're just gonna do what we always do.
Yeah, that's kind of the common trend, is they develop a model that works for them financially, and then they just kind of copy and paste. And I don't think we've copied and pasted one line from any of our projects. Because every site is unique, and it gives you a different opportunity to build something unique on that site.
Yeah, I would say that we come across a lot of homes that are listed as tear downs when they aren't. It's kind of this weird thing that has happened where the agents will just automatically list it as a tear down, but the structure is still impeccable, the foundations are great, and maybe it smells a little weird, but there's still a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, one of our properties that we converted was listed as a tear down, meaning slamming deal for us because it wasn't a tear down, and we were able to use a lot of the existing structure, and then we actually added off that structure to then add the 2 units.
You just had to deal with them calling you crazy when you actually inquired about it showing inside the property, right?
Yeah.
Small annoyance. We've all had that happen, I'm sure.
Yeah, anyone can reach out via email, phone number, website. If you guys want, if you have any questions or like clients that have questions, feel free to use us as a resource. We also have like an ADU series on our website. If people are looking to do ADUs and want more information about that.
Very draft, very long,
Well,
Just call for the short answer.
but it's informative.
Yeah. As you see, we're not so exciting, but
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I think to the contrary, I think this is pretty cool stuff, pretty impressive. It's a lot to wrap your head around, but again, it's a reminder to turn to the experts. We'll have all this stuff on our Facebook, and we'll make sure we get all those links and everything out to everyone. And then also just a reminder to everybody and everyone on Zoom that this was recorded. So if you have if there's any agents that you know that could benefit from watching this recording, please let them know about it. Have to check it out.
Hey, Tim, I have a question quick for them.
Yeah.
So besides, since you're both architects and seem like you have great ideas, so besides doing these kinds of things, do you also just do like, I don't want to say just, do you also do architecture plans for additions or remodeling or that kind of stuff for people? Because I feel like that is so needed.
yes, we do. We do anything on the residential realm. So if you're doing
Okay.
a large addition or renovation to your property where you need even like structural engineering involved, we have a partner structural engineer. So any type of residential construction or plans or permitting, we can help you with.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. It's a wrap.
Oh, really?